my history is I like to do scroll sawing is my #1 love. #2 is wood burning. #3 is carving. I do a lot of classes out there. I just had my third class in carving last night. It was a relief carving, actually. So I like to do wood burning when it involves carvings and the scroll saw, and so you can complement your carvings, animals, birds, things like that that you want to do, and you can use a wood burner for that. Some people just like to wood burn, they're wood burners. So you know, I kind of feel I'm into that category because I try to find projects where I can blend all three, but wood burning is just a lot of fun and very rewarding. I think when, actually it was down to the Pinery Center there where, I don't know if it was Norm or Bob, one of them had a wood burning set, and I was new there and didn't know anything about it. Hey, would you like to, you want to buy one real cheap, or I got a used one here, and oh, okay, that sounds like a good deal. And so I got hooked on it, and within 1 year anyway, I was doing some stuff, and I was making other things with a scroll saw, and I was going down to some shows, some of these craft shows and that type of thing. Well, I brought some of my early wood burnings there, and I don't know, I liked them, but I didn't think I was that great of a wood burner. And somebody, I remember the first time somebody came up and bought a wood burning of mine. It was like $20 or something like that. But just that somebody gave their hard-earned money for one of my wood burnings gave me so much esteem, you know, that, wow, I don't have any kind of artistic degree or anything like that. I just picked it up on my own, and I really had, it was just, from there I really had a lot of fun, and just can't get enough of it, so to speak. So anyway, I like doing wood burning. Just wanted to talk about that tonight. Some of you might be interested in getting a wood burner or trying to do that a little bit, and so I can kind of tell you my experiences in it. When we were kids, probably for Christmas years ago, we got those one temperature wood burners that we plug in. You wait 5 minutes, and then they finally get hot, and then it really burns like crazy. And it's a soldering iron, yeah, different watts, and you know, we probably played with them for a week or two and put them away, and that was the last we saw of them or whatever. That's a different kind of wood burning. That's apples and oranges of that. Today we use variable temperature type boxes that have power in them and that do a finer tip. So again, those one temperature ones, you'd plug them in and they would take about 5 minutes to heat up. One of these can get to 6,000 or 2,000 degrees in 6 seconds. So it's not that we're going to wood burn so fast, it's that they're very responsive to our temperature setting. If we need to go up or down or turn it off, turn it back on, it's going to come right back there and be very easier to use. So I tell a lot of people that are purchasing wood burners, you can get a one temperature one. And I have seen people bring in some things to me that they made with a one temperature pen, and they're just gorgeous. They're just outstanding, and they do a great job. So not to be discouraging that you shouldn't get one of those, but they're very hard to learn. And those people did admit that it took years for them of patience to make something good as they did in those. And some people will go with the attitude of, well, see, the reward is for those, they're pretty cheap. So you can get them $15, $30, $45. These are going to be $150, $200, something like that. So the reward is you don't pay very much for those little ones. Well, I'll try one of those out, one of the cheaper ones, see if I like it, and then if I like it, I'll go into the other kind of wood burning. Well, you probably won't like it because it's harder to do, and so it'll, again, if you want to stick to it, you can do some nice things, but it makes it so much easier to have the variable type of control into what you're burning. So there's obviously a unit you plug in. It's got this little kit box of stuff here that I always tote around with me when I do my wood burning, so I got just enough tips to bring in today. I probably got 40 or 50 of them at home, and I thought, well, not going to use them all here tonight, so I'll bring some of my favorite ones, and we'll do one little demo on it. And so we have a way to, if you're not an artist, if you're not good with sketching, you can get lots of patterns from clip art off your computer, coloring books, and indeed can draw it. Kind of the idea of how we do something is to get a pattern, and I tape it onto the top, and I take some graphite paper. It's kind of like the old carbon paper, but carbon kind of smears. It's not as good to work with, and I don't even know if we can find it much anymore in the stores. So the graphite paper is what we use, and then we just take a minute to trace with it can be a pencil, a pen. You really don't need it on the wood very hard, just enough to see what we're going to be doing. And so we trace it, and if I'm going to use the pattern more than once, I might use a red pen to kind of see where I've been, or if it's very complex, then I can do a red pen or a different color, and so I can tell where I'm going. So we take the graphite paper, just slip it under there, just trace away. When we get done with that, we'll end up having something that looks like that. It just looks like a faint pencil. That's actually the graphite on there. And so now we have our pattern to go by. We actually get our wood burner out. We start burning a little bit into the wood, and I'll go over some of those type of pens, but this is what outlining, I call it outlining, will look like. And that then is just going following all the pencil lines, and you're just making a copy of that. When you get done with that, then we do what we call shading. We can brown inside of the lines. We can make shadowing effects and different items. This is also, you can color. I don't like to color a whole lot, but kind of takes away from it a little bit. But if I color, I'd like to do subtle colors, not so loud colors like this. This one is coal wood. The popular one in the past that I know of is Detail Master, and they're not in business anymore, but they were a nice unit. Out at the store, when we weren't able to get Detail Master anymore, we had to decide which ones to go with. And so we looked at coal wood being, many times you would buy an item, the box, you would have to buy the pen, you have to buy the tips, even the cord, carry box to put it in if you want. So all that stuff was piecemealed out, and you spent a lot of money by the time you got it all done. Coalwood offers packages. So they got a box that it comes in, 1 or 2 pens, 5 tips, and they can be, there's one called a detailer. It isn't quite this big, but it works great. $165, I believe it is. This one here is $219.99, and again, that's for the whole package. So by the time you get the other ones and add them all up, you're going to be hitting over $250. So we thought that was a pretty good item to get. And in the meantime, right after we decided to go with all this, and we put it into the stores and everything, into our store, Woodcraft came out with buying Razor Tip. So Razor Tip is another good brand that's out there, and we can order anything, pens, and they even have adapters that you can go between Detail Master and Razor Tip and the Coalwood, and they can interchange the pens, so you can do all that. And so most of them out there are a pretty good unit. I really can't speak bad about don't buy this one or don't buy that one, I guess. Now they have different kinds of pens that come with them. I really like Coalwood's pen. This is what it looks like. It's just like a pencil, pretty thin. It's got a cork lining around it, so it doesn't heat up your fingers as much as those Detail Masters did. On the Coalwood, they have a cord already attached to it. And it just has the little, I think it's called a phone jack. Just a little phone jack. The Detail Masters have an RCA jack, I think they call it. So that one just plugs in like that. And then there's little tips that go into the end. And when you plug that in there just right. Now sometimes, and Colwood even offers it, some of the others do offer pens that do not have replacement tips on them. They're already soldered right in place and they're permanent. And those are great. The downfall is they cost a little bit for those. So if you're going to use it a lot, then that's great. The idea was that gets a better induction of the heat on the tip because it's soldered right in there strong and it's not going to get weak, and you're getting the most power right out of the box for it. The Detail Masters had a replacement type, and as we went in and out with them, especially kind of at an angle, and every time you do it, it just wears it out after a while, and then they weren't working so good after a while, so they kind of lost itself. Colwood is amazing. They have a thicker pen prongs. They have a deep cavity and some Bakelite there, and that deep cavity allows you to also gets lined up to a little notch in there, so you can't but just put it in straight, and then it goes way down in there pretty hard. So it really grabs it in there, and I really can't tell the difference between a permanent and a one that has the replacement. If that does wear out, I can get, most of these are about $8.95, whereas the whole pen's $25, $30 maybe. There's what they call cutters, there's shaders, and there's writers or floaters. So there's 3 different kinds of tips that are out there, is what I call them. The cutters actually do cut into the wood just a little bit. The cutters do cut into the wood, not a lot. We're not carving with it or anything. It's just barely going. This is Baltic birch plywood. It's got a very thin veneer on it, and it's probably just going into that veneer. It's not even going below that. But it is nice to have these be able to cut nice. So my point is, there's sharpening and cleaning. If you wanted to have a nice crisp line, then you don't have to sharpen it like a knife. It doesn't have to be surgical sharp, but you should put a little edge on there if you want to get that. Now, if you start sharpening it too much, stone or sandpaper or something like that, then it's going to wear out, and so that's the downfall. And the cleaning, I use fine steel wool. I like using the Scotch-Brite pad. It's less abrasive as possible. They do get carboned up, gunked up. One time I had a lady who had a good-sized rocking horse, and she commissioned me to do some wood burning on there. She wanted their names on the slats, each one of the names on the slats of the rocker. It actually slurried up the finish. It did get to the wood, it burned it. There was no browning to it. It's going to be black, you know, and turned out nice, and it was all right. I was a little worried about it, but it was steel wool just going over that every few seconds of just doing that, and just keep cleaning that off, and the smoke was coming off, and you don't want to breathe that stuff. I get a little fan and have it blow away from me if I need to, and so I don't get into that. If I'm doing some wood burning, I usually don't do it on an easel like this. Usually it's right on the table, and I just get right over it like this, and then that smoke comes right up in me, and as well as the heat coming up. And so it is good to have a little fan if you don't want to be breathing that stuff in. And so anyway, so I got a cutter in here right now, and it's been 6 seconds now, I think, so it should be all ready to go. I'm going to put this on about a 5. This one, by the way, has a detail and a heavy-duty side. And so it's got one lever here, 1 through 10 scale. And if I put it on the heavy-duty side, it's got quite a bit of wattage in there. It's going to burn plenty. If I use a thicker type tip, that's going to be advantageous then to use that. But I usually use it on the detail side where I can turn it down. I'll have, when I'm really trying to get it brown, I've got a little bit more of a area between, let's say if the other one was going to be at 4 is not burning enough, and at 5 it's way too dark, and so I only got one little section in there I can work with. Well, if I put it on the detail side, I can go between maybe 3 and 5 or something, so it gives me a little bit more of a window to get it right in there. Now what I'd like to do with a knife is be able to get a consistent line. Kind of like the ballpoint pen invention, you know, it gives out just enough ink where it's not slobbering it all over, but there's always ink there when you draw your line. And so I just like a consistent line. So I can, as I move down, I'm just drawing it down. If I go faster and faster, it's going to get fainter and fainter. So if I slow up, it'll get darker. So everything's relative for time, for how long I have it on the wood, and the temperature setting that I have it on. So if I want to get darker, I can always turn it up a little more. Now to get a consistent line, as I'm not burning on here, it's already building up heat on there. And so you can see when I start out, I get a dark line, and then when I go down, it gets better and better. And if I get my timing right just on there, I can do a pretty consistent line. But I got that dark spot right in the beginning. So I usually have a scrap piece of wood nearby. I can cool it off by hitting it there and then start running my line. Now if this is, say, and they go to great lengths not to tell you the wattage on these things. If this was a 100-watt unit, for example, I could go so fast on it and get whatever my pen and whatever heat setting I have it as. Now, if I've got a 50-watt unit, I bought the detail or something, it'll do the same thing. I just have to go slower. And some of the detail masters were even 200 watts, so you could even go faster than this. So you kind of have to get around to realizing what speed to go at, and again, if your tip is clean and do that. So you just draw it down like that, and that's basically all there is to it there. I like this one where it's a little bit of it is a skew. It's a cutter, but it has a rounded heel on the bottom, so I can take it between my finger and my thumb there, and I can just turn it around. So if I want to do circles, I can do circles, the little curves, and by just kind of putting it between my finger and my index finger and my thumb and just turning it. And you can do circles with a straight skew. It's just like an ice skater has a straight skate. They can turn on it, and but I like that rounded heel for that. Now, if you didn't have a rounded heel, if you were doing a roof line, shingles, something like that, then if you just had a straight blade, that will do nice straight job better. So you can get those in small, medium, or large size. So there's lots of different tips like that you can get. This one here is a shader. Shaders are usually meant to shade, to get brown, and they're kind of bent like a spoon, so you can get the flat of it in there a little better. And then what we do with those is try to get a brown. Now this is some of the harder part of learning wood burning, is controlling that shade, trying to get that nice brown. At first, when we wood burn and do a shade, we can get light, we can try for medium, and we get dark. Well, then as we get more controlled, we can get light, medium, medium dark, and dark, so we can get 6 different shades in there, and eventually we might be able to get 10. So you can get real light, get almost nothing, get real light and light medium, and a little darker to the medium side than medium, and medium dark and almost dark, and then pitch black dark. So shading to control that is having a good shader and a good unit to do that. Part on shading too is kind of what wood you're doing. I think that's why basswood is probably the #1 thing for wood burning. It enables you to do that, the structure of the wood helps you to get that 10 different shades, if you will, or you can kind of control it. Something like oak or something I don't have as much luck on. I can just get the light, medium, and dark. And so sometimes it's the wood that really makes the difference too, but that's part of it. I use the cutters probably, myself, I use them 70–80% of the time. And the shader I'll use 10 or 20% of the time. And then the last little bit is a floater or a rider. And they have some kind of a non-cutting edge. It can be a little small ball. It can just be like a little tube that's bent over. And so that doesn't cut into the wood at all. It just, there we go. Often it's called a rider, and people want to write their names with it and stuff. I don't have as good a luck doing that. I like using the small little cutter to write my name or letters or whatever, but you can do that with a writer if you practice a little bit. I get a little, it's got more metal to it, I guess. It seems to get more hot, cold effect when I use it, but I can see I can do circles and do little squigglies, and if you can see it real close, but I got a little hot, cold, kind of where the grain is there too. So kind of the trick I do on that is turn it way down. If I'm doing little circles, and just turn it down and get it brown, and if you want it darker, turn it up and go back over it again. Do it in a couple sessions and you might be able to get them better. So I do a little eye. I have a heck of a time doing, I was doing trees okay, but I couldn't do bushes very well. I had lots of little squigglies in them. This really did the ticket for that. Now this is a piece of basswood. This basswood is a slice of a tree. You can see the bark around there. So it's end grain. And when I do end grain, I do want to make sure I get that sanded real well. So as you know, when you stain something, the end grain sucks it all in to that end grain and acts a little differently than the rest of the wood. So I find that true with the wood burning as well. So I do like to sand it to at least a 120, maybe a 180, something like that. So here's my little pattern I'm going to put on there. We'll pretend that we got that on there. We're going to slip a little graphite paper under there, and I'll trace around it, and so that we're not to take too long at this, but see if we can just start it here. It's already really getting pretty dark there. Most beginners, I think, go too dark at first. Now this is the main part of his body, so it's okay if it gets a little dark there, but and I can already tell it acts differently than if I just had a piece of regular basswood. Now I've done this particular outline several times, so the end grain on this one, I can tell the difference a little bit, but so there I'm using my thumb and my forefingers to do the curves. Sometimes I have a little theory on maybe if you are good with penmanship, so you have control of that pen, you've had experience. That's how you get good at penmanship. I haven't done a lot of it, but leather is one that can be done. I don't usually cut into the leather, but the floaters are good for that. You can actually do paper, clear acrylic, canvas, paper bags. I actually got part of a moose horn, and I will tell you when that burns, it stinks. Kind of like burning hair or something, I guess. But another tip that I kind of always kind of fell into, I got to have music when I'm playing. This is non-verbal music. And I went to actually a convention that some woodburners were at, and some nationally known from the magazines and everything. And I went to one of them, and she gave her top 10, some of her top 10 tips, and one of those top 10 tips was having light music in the background. And it confirmed, yes, I knew that was not just me being crazy or whatever. She says, oh, that makes such a difference. She says, when I do that. So, and that probably could be true for carving as well. When you do your outlining, you look back at it and you say, okay, it's okay, but I don't know if I'm that good at it. Wait till you get to the shading. When you start putting that shading and shadowing on there, then your piece comes alive. I started adding my own. So I would trace everything, but then it's like, okay, I'm going to add a couple trees or a couple rocks here or there, and just put something in on, try to put my own flair to it. We're going to get out the shader here. I always like to have a scrap piece handy so I can always tune it in. And if you're going to practice on something, do it on the same kind of wood that you're going to be doing your final. Now I'm just going to stroke this kind of lightly here on the horn part. Now I'm going to shade the body, but I'm going to do something different than using a shading tool. When you're using whatever tip you're using, it's meant to use it a particular way, but don't feel like that's the rule you have to do. You can use it upside down, you can use it sideways, you can, any way you want to get it in there. I can actually take this little shader and kind of make little lines like a cutter, so you don't have to, get 30 different types of tips just to feel like you have to do some good work with them. You can get just a few and use them different ways. Shading, what I like to do with some of my pieces is I like to use wood stain. And it has to be light so you can see your dark marks when you're done. This is a spring oak. Where I've cut with the cutter, if you don't put too much on, it'll flow, and then when it gets to that trough or that cutter, it'll kind of stop. So you don't have to get in there and get every little piece. It actually goes quite easy. Yeah, this is really going to soak it in because it's in grain. So normally I don't. Normally it doesn't. Another one, interesting one would be to leave the elk alone so much, leaving it white, darken everything beyond the elk. Okay, at least you can get the idea there. Sometimes I finish them with a clear acrylic. I like using a water-based polyurethane. It's got UV protection in it. Wood burning, if you hang them on the wall, you put them someplace by your slider window or something, they're going to fade. They just don't last. So the more you can keep them away from sunlight, the longer they'll stay. And little UV protection on them will be good. So that's what I can do in a few minutes.